Hey there YouTube, this is XVIcaliber for Team EDM, coming at you with a sort of weird hybrid video. You see, last week you guys have probably already seen my Photon Monarch deck list, and that deck list has changed numerous times since last week, and it's gotten to the point where I think the deck has become a lot more consistent and a lot more fun to play. So, along with going over the deck list changes, I'm going to talk about how to play this deck, because it's a very different sort of Monarch deck, and we'll get into some really different sort of plays with it. So, really quickly, 3 Cyber Valley, that changed the same, stayed the same. 3 Battle Fader, this was new because I needed more tribute fodder, and Photon Saber Tiger just wasn't cutting it. And Battle Fader allows me to control attacks, which is really helpful in a Monarch deck. 3 Photon Thrasher, that stayed the same. I increased the number of Caius to 3 because Caius is an incredibly good card, especially this format with all of the dark monsters. And since this deck creates tribute fodder on your turn and not your opponent's turn, it's kind of hard to punish this deck, and I'll get into sort of things with that later. 2 Tragodia was a change. I decided that I needed more hand traps, because having battle phase hand traps to utilize as tribute fodder and also to make more boss monsters is incredibly useful. 2 Zaborg, he stayed the same, because like Caius, he's an incredibly powerful card, but he's not as good as Caius, and I keep him around because I need something to use Photon Sanctuary with. Along with 2 Light and Darkness Dragon, which also hasn't changed. This is the boss of the deck, and it's important to sort of play this card correctly. I took down Divine Knight Ishzark to 1 because he's sort of a niche card, and while he's an amazing card to tribute something over Photon Sanctuary with and then punch stuff and banish them, it's good to just have one of him, because that way you can use him when you need him. Honest and Gores haven't changed, because they're sort of staple hand traps in a deck like this. Honest because I run so many lights, and Gores because he's great tribute fodder and can turn games around. Last monster I put in is Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. Now, testing this on DN, I've realized that this deck does not have a lot of boss monsters, which is why I put Galaxy Eyes in here, because off of Photon Sanctuary, it's a free monster, and it really punishes the Xyz monster meta that's going on right now, because it can banish them, and then it gains attack by getting rid of their materials, which is really good. By the way, I'm looking for this in Ghost. If anyone has a Ghost of this card, you should PM this channel. 3 Photon Sanctuary hasn't changed. Probably the easiest tribute fodder card to use in the game, except for the fact that you can't tribute one of the tokens for Caius until the next turn, but that's beside the point. I took Duality down to 2, because this deck special summons a lot, and this card turns off Photon Thrasher and Photon Sanctuary, which are incredibly, staple cards in this deck. So, Pot of Duality needed to go down to 2, because it's still useful as hand correction, but it's not a run 3. Forbidden Lance hasn't changed. It stayed the same. It's great attack manipulation, helps win battles. Misty hasn't changed. A lot of people are telling me to run 3, but I like 2. And then limited staples. Pretty good stuff. And the trap lineup's changed a little bit. Reckless Greed hasn't. This card is actually really, really good, because it's completely chainable, and this deck draws so much and can get under Reckless Greed, sort of like how Dark Worlds can with all of their turbo cards. This deck has Cyber Valley, and it has Photon Sanctuary, and it has Pot of Duality, and it really helps you make plays even though you're not drawing, which is really nice. Warning has stayed in, because Warning is more important than Bottomless in my opinion. Bottomless is out of the deck now. I think Warning is a lot more essential for getting rid of, the key activation sort of monsters. The Insector Dragonflies, the Wind-Up Sharks, all of those things. Well, Wind-Up Magician, rather, because Shark you can bottomless, but that's beside the point. Fiendish Chainstays, because, again, I'm not running Treeborn, so I do not need to worry about having back row. Now that we've gone over the updated deck list, I'm going to go through some plays. Going into the sort of tutorial aspect of this video, we're going to look at the plays that this deck can make on a regular basis. Now, again, Photon Sanctuary is a card you run at 3. It is the most important card in the deck because it provides tribute fodder for your most important monster and some other important monsters, and your draw engine. Now, Cyber Valley is an incredibly useful card, because like Battle Fader, it can end the battle phase. The only difference is that Cyber Valley has to be on the field for that. It's always nice to have a Battle Fader in your hand along with a Cyber Valley on the field to help prevent, Insectors or other dumb decks sort of ruining your fun. But Cyber Valley has 3 effects, all of which are useful in this deck. You banish it when it's targeted for an attack to end the battle phase and draw a card. You banish it and another monster you control to draw 2 cards. Or you banish it and 1 card in your hand to put a card in your graveyard on top of your deck. Now, I've only used the 3rd ability once in a duel, but it did help me because it did put Caius back on top of my deck, which was useful because I drew it next turn, and I was able to roll face with it. An important thing to know about Cyber Valley is that it is a normal summon monster. You are not going to be able to special summon this card unless for some reason it was destroyed and you monster reborn it, because most of the time this card is going to be banished if it's done its job. If it's ended the battle phase, it banishes itself. If you use it to draw, it banishes itself. This card should not be in the graveyard, and if it is, you should probably monster reborn it so that you can get it out of the graveyard. Because your opponent can use this against you, and it's an incredibly annoying thing to have your opponent monster reborn a Cyber Valley, and then banish it and draw their own 2 cards. Because, having your opponents use your own monsters against you is annoying anyways, but especially if it's a card that generically can draw you 2 cards. Photon Sanctuary allows you to make tokens with which to remove with Cyber Valley. Cyber Valley's effect does work on tokens, so you can remove Cyber Valley and a token you make to draw 2 cards, and you still have a token left. Now, remember, the tokens from Photon Sanctuary have 2,000 attack and 0 defense, but they are summoned in defense mode. So, if they manage to survive the turn, what you need to do is put them into attack mode. This allows them to act as 2,000 attack walls, and if your opponent is dumb, they can attack into one when you have Honest in your hand, because they are light monsters, and thus will work with Honest. I have done this before. It worked out pretty well, even though I ended up losing that game anyways, because Dark Worlds are stupid. Joey. But let's look at our other tribute fodder monsters. We've got Photon Thrasher, and we've got Battle Fader. Battle Fader is self-explanatory. I don't think I need to tell you how awesome Battle Fader is. You special summon it when your opponent declares a direct attack and end the battle phase. The only way to stop this card is with Warning or Judgment, and you really don't want to pay life points to have a battle phase go through unless it's going to be game. So that's the one drawback to it, but aside from that, it just stays in your hand, and you just play it when you're about to take a lot of damage, and then you don't take damage, and it sits there as a monster. Now this card is another card that should not be in your graveyard, because once you special summon it with its effect, when it's removed from the field, it's banished. So this means if you tribute it for Caius, let me see if I can find a Caius in this pile of crap. Here we go. If you tribute it for Caius, then it's banished. Another thing I really like to do after battle fading is to play Cyber Valley and remove them to draw cards. Photon Thrasher is it's a weird card, because you look at it and you instantly see 2100 attack and 4 stars. This makes you think, oh man, that's pretty broke. It's a normal summonable monster. It's actually not. You cannot normal summon Photon Thrasher. You have to special summon Photon Thrasher when you control no monsters. And then it can't attack if you control another monster. So it's a weird card to use, but it ultimately helps in this deck because you can special summon it and then tribute it for a Monarch and ruin people's days. Now, say you fade something, play Cyber Valley and draw 2 cards, you're thinking, why would you do that? You wasted your summon. You can't summon now. Wrong. You have Photon Thrasher. Photon Thrasher is special summonable, and it has 2100 attack, so it beats over stuff, and it's Honest compatible, which is great. Photon Thrasher's a great card. You can play Photon Sanctuary after you summon Thrasher, but you cannot attack with it if you do. You can, however, still use it for tributes. So I hope that that goes into the sort of tribute fodder aspects of this deck. In the next video, I'm actually going to make a separate video for this. I'm going to go over plays with tribute monsters and how you accomplish that. So this is XVIcaliber for Team EDM, signing out.